no intent of saying this, but I feel compelled to do so. Warren Buffett, obviously one of the most smartest investment people in the world, right? Made billions through his investments. Said one of his best investments in his whole life was $100 he spent for a communication class. And the reason why I say that is Toastmasters. He spent $100 on a Dale Carnegie course to learn how to communicate better. Obviously, there's speakers, bureaus, there's different things as well, but I strongly encourage, the ability to communicate is huge. And Warren Buffett himself said his best $100 investment was learning how to communicate better. And so just a plug for that, unselfish plug. We're gonna see a lot of multimedia today. I don't like just simply talking. You're gonna see videos and all sorts of things that support what I'm talking about. We're gonna start with this.
Wow, like, suppose I get there one day, you know?
Welcome to the television series From Glory Days, where former legendary professional athletes share their personal stories about their transition from sports into the life they live today.
It was so much fun that, you know, they were going to have to rip the uniform off.
You're used to the notoriety, the things that you feel, the attention, and now all that's gone.
What kind of challenges, if any, did you have as a result of your transition?
Stop spending money. That was the toughest part for me because for years, you're able to go and buy what you want. Go to any car dealership, pick out any car you want.
36 different Hall of Fame, All-Star, World Champion, and other former athletes sat down during the first 3 seasons of the show with host Kurt David.
I played far more basketball for free than I played for pay. I love the sport. I love the game, and that's what I missed.
Kurt discovers each athlete's story about the pinnacle of their pro sports career and the pressures they faced in life, during and after their life as a high-profile athlete.
Here's what happens. You lose your income, you lose your friends because they're inside the locker room and you're on the outside. Medical staff because they're on the inside, you're on the outside. You lose any scheduling or any structure that you have, it's gone. And you lose your identity. And so those are some heavy, tremendous losses at one point in time that happens to you.
How did they personally handle their transition from sports?
That's a basketball player. You got to take a regular job. You got to go out. You got to do, it's a whole different lifestyle.
Why football? Football probably chose me. Where we was from, we were limited
On choices and options
the
and
things you had access to. And when I got into high school, I figured out something very quickly, that being in the game, you didn't have to be the biggest, the fastest, or the strongest. You just had to be totally dedicated to it. And I was more dedicated to the effort part of it.
Join us on location, connecting with each athlete on their home turf as they look to find new passion and purpose in the life they live today.
So was it difficult to sit on the sideline broadcast and watch these guys play?
It was difficult, Kurt, the first 2 or 3 years, and here's the reason why. I thought I could still play.
Live in the past, present, and future through the eyes of some of the greatest athletes each sport has known. From Glory Days.
How you doing, Owen?
What are you doing? Are you being interviewed?
Look at this guy. Hey, what was this when you were on the show? You got Jackie?
So imagine this, I'm walking through an airport, getting ready to board a plane for the most important trip of my life. I mean, this is something that I was so excited about, I couldn't believe it. I may have my brown bomber jacket on, my Ray-Ban sunglasses, my carry-on bag. I'm walking through the airport, I'm really excited. As I'm getting on the plane, to get ready to get into my seat on the plane. Right? There's a lot of advantages to my height. Airplanes are definitely not one of them. In fact, I should probably get this off the table right off the bat, because this is one of the things that people are always asking when public, right? Is how tall am I, right? So let's get this right off the table, so you don't have to think about that during the presentation today. I am 4 foot and 33 inches tall. The math quizzes here. For those of you that got a C in math, I'm 5 foot and 21 inches. Yeah. For those of you adhere to the metric system, I'm 2 meters 6 centimeters. And for those of you that failed math, I'm 6'9". So I'm getting on this airplane, and literally I'm sitting in my seat, I'm buckling my seatbelt, and I'm really excited, but I'm also extremely nervous. Have you ever been really excited and really nervous all at the same time? Yeah. I'm really excited because I'm boarding that plane to fly over to Europe to play professional basketball. Imagine that, getting paid to do something I love, right? Paid well. I was really nervous because I was gonna be 5,000 miles away from my family and friends in a country whose language I had no idea how to speak. And I really didn't know what to expect as far as basketball. Move forward from that moment, and I'm laying on a cold hardwood basketball floor. And as I lay on that basketball court, I remember hearing the sounds of the fans being very loud all of a sudden, just a sudden hush. And I remember some people walking around me and kind of whispering, and I laid there on the basketball court, and I knew at that moment, my life had changed. I knew my life was gonna change. We'll come back to that story later. But as a result of my book and TV show, I have the honor of sitting down with Hall of Fame, All-Star, and World Champion former professional athletes and interviewing them about life after pro sports. Now, whether you're a sports fan or not, did you know that 100% of professional athletes ultimately lose their job? Think about that. At some point, all professional athletes are done. Did you know that 25% of NFL players within the first year out are broke? 25% within the first year out. 78%, in fact, you know what? We got a CPA here and some people are financial business. So I like putting some math to these numbers. In other words, you know, if you look at 25% and you look at the NFL, if you look at the 1,696 NFL players, the average salary, 1.9 million. If you look at that 25%, that's $106 million basically gone, right? Let's put some numbers to this. 78% of NFL players are broke within 2 years out. Again, let's put some numbers to that. $2.5 billion gone. NBA is not much better. 60% of NBA players within 5 years are broke. Again, putting some math to that, 491 professional NBA players, $6.2 million average salary, $1.8 billion gone. And it doesn't matter with relationships either. Up to 80% of athletes in transition divorce. So again, we can get the number of professional athletes, 5,000 or 3,537 professional athletes in the main four sports, 2,854 of those end in divorce, from job loss to disaster. That's the reality of professional athletes transitioning. I've sat down with gentlemen that one guy, he was pitching in the World Series 5 out of 6 games. Pitched 5 out of 6 World Series games. 2 years later, he was working in a rural factory to make ends meet, pay for his family, help with his family. I've sat down with a gentleman who, when he was done playing pro football, you might have already heard his story before. His name is Eric Kipple. He played 10 years with the Detroit Lions. When Eric was done playing professional football, his 15-year-old son committed suicide. His very well-established business went bankrupt, and he spent 60 days locked up in Oakland County Jail for multiple drunk driving offenses. I've talked to people that went bankrupt. I've talked to people that lost money. I remember talking to Rick Leach, who played at Michigan, played professionally for the Tigers. When he got done playing professional basketball, it was a spiral. And he talked about having money in his pocket, going into business, but not knowing anything about business. People robbing him blind, had to sue his own partner, just the horrific things that he went through. In season 4, we interviewed somebody by the name of Darren McCarty. Very public, very ugly transition for professional sports. I mean, cocaine addictions, gambling addictions, bankruptcies, divorces. I could tell you story after story after story about the demise of professional athletes after pro sports. But that's not what I'm here for today. There's actually good news, and that's why I'm here today. What I discovered is that as I studied the athletes, I have a counseling background, as I studied the athletes, as I interviewed the athletes, as I analyzed my own transition from pro sports, I realized there was a commonality of success for the ones that found success. For the athletes that maybe they went bankrupt, but then they recreated themselves again and created businesses or foundations or charities. And I found a commonality in those 5 things, being the simple mind that I am, I created an acronym so I could remember them. And that acronym is this: R.U.L.E.S. Each letter stands for something, each letter means something. So being a simple mind, again, to help remember this, I'm like, okay, well, this is a good way, because there's rules in life, right? There's obviously rules in sports, right? So that helped me remember, okay, yeah, we have rules in sports, we have rules in life, there's family rules, or rules at work, right? And so rules is a good acronym to remember. So if you're interested, first of all, before we even get into this, let me applaud you and the people that are online right now for being here today. And here's why. Sudden change is what I love to speak about. How many people in this room and online have been through any type of change in the last 18 months? Two hands up, two hands and one up, right? Unbelievable, right? We're living in a time in history when rapid change is going to continue to occur. And I'm not even just talking about a pandemic, right? I'm talking about acceleration of knowledge, acceleration of technology. We are living in a time in the world history in which change is going to happen so quickly. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you're not prepared for change, if you're not prepared to handle that change in a positive way, you're going to be left in the dust, because it's going to happen so quickly before your head even spins, you're not going to know it. And so understanding how to handle change and how to embrace it and how to be in front of change and how to handle it and how to help others handle change is one of the most important things we can do in our lives. And that's why I'm here today. So let's get into this. Each letter stands for something. The first letter, refocus. R stands for refocus. And the best way to refocus is to evaluate our current goals and look at what are my new goals. Think about that as a professional athlete. I'm going from being a high caliber athlete, world-class athlete, to no longer doing that. That was probably one of the most difficult aspects for me, was realizing that it was so easy for me to set goals as an athlete. I'm gonna do this workout. I'm gonna work out 3 times a day. This is my workout for the next 3 months. This is where I'm gonna be in 4 months, this is 6 months. It was easy. It was very easy. It wasn't always easy to do it, right? It was a lot of work, but it was easy to set those goals. When I got done playing professional basketball, it was very difficult for me to reshift that mindset of, now what, right? And I can't tell you, I've done 50 TV interviews, how many of those people say, I don't know, what are you gonna do next? I don't know. Refocusing is so important when we're dealing with change, right? Because as you're dealing with change, it's important to know where you're going. If you don't know where you're going, you're probably gonna end up there. And so as a result, that refocus is so important. Anybody a history buff here? Anybody like history? I love history. Okay, I'm gonna push your knowledge.
Good at it.
Yeah. We'll see who passed. We saw earlier we had a math lesson to see who did well in math and who didn't do math. Right? Now we're gonna do a history lesson to see who. So on January 16th of 1920, something important happened in the country.
COVID. Trump, I was just looking at.
It wasn't COVID. And January 16th, 1920.
Another pandemic?
It wasn't a pandemic. Easy to think that way right now.
One of the amendments or prohibition, one of the two.
What was it?
One of the amendments or prohibition.
It was an amendment and it was prohibition. All right? You got an A+. You got an A+ in math. We are gonna get into some other subjects later, so we'll see. Notice he's gonna be ducking out later, so how convenient is that, right? And so on January 16th of 1920, there was something called prohibition that happened in America. Now, at that moment, when that enacted on January 16th of 1920, at that time, there was 1,273 breweries in America. Now, regardless of your stand on drinking beer and not drinking beer, I don't drink personally, but regardless of that, think about it as a business standpoint. 1,273 breweries were suddenly told, guess what? You can no longer do this legally, right? And so looking at sudden change, right? It's like all of a sudden, what do you mean? I mean, they saw it coming, obviously, but it was like, I can't do this anymore. This is our bread and butter, right? By the time Prohibition was done, 13 years later, there was 244 that remained open. So my question wasn't what we know what happened to the 80% that closed. We know, right? What did those 20% do that remained open?
Well, Stroll started making ice cream for one thing.
Well, one of them literally started refocusing. Stroh's is one of them. There was another one that was founded by a couple German immigrants. They said, we're not gonna take this prohibition thing lying down. Let's start refocusing what we do. We're gonna make ginger ale, we're gonna make corn syrup, we're gonna make car parts even. And as a result, Anheuser-Busch survived that time and sold in 2008 for $52 billion. Talk about refocusing. Talk about getting through that, right? And so my challenge to you is this. As you're experiencing change, whatever change that is, could be a personal change, could be a family change, could be a change work-related, right? There's all sorts of areas that can change in our life constantly. It's gonna happen, right? What are you doing about your refocus? Now, I have a little task force, but before we do that, I mentioned about multimedia. We got a few people. These are some of my interviews, and they're little sound bites about the refocus that happened with these athletes.
To find purpose, here's what you have to do if you're looking for purpose in life, and it's your greatest motivator, is you're dying by the side of the road and you know you're gonna bleed out in 5 minutes, and somebody that you don't know comes along, gives you a pen and a piece of paper, and they say, write something down, write something you wanna leave behind down. And you have to write something so compelling that they take that away with them, and they're absolutely compelled to give it to somebody else because it's so important.
Writing it down. So one of the things that I did as an athlete, it was very easy for me to write goals. It was easy for me to put them on paper. I remember when I was playing professionally, I had a piece of paper at the door of my bedroom that every time I walked out, I would see this piece of paper. It was my workout goals. It was a week, 3 months, 6 months worth of workout goals, 3 times a day. And it was easy for me. So my challenge for you is this, as Doug Smith, and I'll tell you the story about Doug Smith later on. Write them down. So I see some pens and papers here. So one of the things I'd like to ask you to do right now is take a moment to think about one change. Just think about one change, okay? We could be blasted with all sorts of change in our life, right? Whether it be family or professionally. Think about one change in your life right now. And I challenge you right now to think about that change and think about a goal that you might have with that change. So think about that for a second. Write it down. What is it that might be something you want to address with the change that you're experiencing right now? What's something that you might need to refocus on? What is something that you might need to establish as a goal as a result of that change? Let's take a few moments to do that. The best way to refocus is to evaluate your current goals and establish new goals. And by establishing new goals, it redevelops that passion and purpose in our lives, right? If I have something to see, something that I can work towards, that really reignites that passion in our life. Professional athletes are some of the most passionate people I know, right? Very passionate. You have to be to get to that level. You have to be extremely passionate. And losing that passion and purpose sometimes causes a lot of people to be lost. That's why you see the stats that you see, right? There's lots of reasons for that, but one of them is just losing that purpose, losing that passion. And by developing new goals, by hyper-focusing on those goals, it helps you establish new passion in your life, which is so important for getting through change. I didn't mention it, but this gentleman that you just heard from, he was a #2 draft pick in the NHL, went to the LA Kings. And I have more about Doug's story later on. He went from Ottawa, Canada to the LA in a #2 draft pick. He wasn't #1, he was 2nd draft pick in the overall NHL. I'll tell you more about his story. This guy you might recognize, maybe not because he's got a shaved head now and lost the Fu Manchu that he used to have. This is Buddha Edwards, played for the Pistons. Listen to what he has to say about refocusing.
I would say stay the course, do what you think that will help you out. I mean, you gotta plan for that though, because once basketball is over, you have to plan for something because you can't play. I was fortunate enough to play 19 years.
That's amazing.
A lot of guys don't play 19 years and then they're finished. They don't know what to do. A lot of people didn't get their degrees and things like that, so they have to find their niche after that.
So again, you hear mention about planning and refocusing, writing down goals as part of that planning. And I gotta tell you, we have more information available than ever before in history. right? I could go on my phone, you could go on a laptop, I could find something if it takes 5 seconds, that's a long time, right? We have more information available than ever before, but less thinking. And refocusing takes thinking. Understanding what my goals are, understanding where I want to be, especially as I'm facing change, especially as I see change coming. That's probably one of the most difficult things to do, is to think about what is it that I need to do? What is it I want to do? One more person to hear from here. This is a 4-time Super Bowl winner by the name of Rocky Bleier. Rocky's story is that he was drafted, he played at Notre Dame, won a championship, drafted by Pittsburgh to the Steelers, went to Pittsburgh for 1 year, got drafted into Vietnam. He went from the fields of the NFL to the fields of Vietnam, literally. Hand grenade in this leg, shot in this leg. Doctors were like, oh yeah, you'll walk again. He was like, walk again? I want to play football. They're like, you'll never play football again. Came back and won 4 Super Bowls after that with the Steelers. But listen what he has to say about after sports and refocusing in his life.
You really have to take a look at yourself. What makes you happy in a transition? What feels good in your gut, right there, that gut, because it turns and churns. And then there's an aspect that goes, you know, this is what I like to do, or not what I like to do. It doesn't have to be based on money or financials, but what you want.
So very important as we establish that refocus is looking at what is it that I want? What is it that we want? What is it, you know, depending on the transition you're going through, the change you're going through, those are questions you have to answer as you're writing things down and refocusing. I can't emphasize enough about writing it down, because by doing that, it helps see it and also keeps you accountable as a result. Oh yeah, I wrote that down, okay? Now, we could spend the rest of the day delving deeper into this aspect of it. I've done a half-day workshop talking about this, and delving very deep into, okay, let's break this refocus down. Let's break down your goals, short-term goals, long-term goals. Let's break down some accountability pieces in there. We could do that. We're not going to do that today because of time. But it's very important that you do spend that time. Again, we have more information available, but less thinking. It takes thinking to do this, right? We're all dealing with change. How do we refocus during that time?
Excuse me, Kurt.
Yes.
I just had to say that people spend more time planning a vacation than they do planning their life.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a great point.
It's really true.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I haven't planned a vacation in the last year, but I'd like to start planning one again with the family. So I might skew that percentage, but I agree with you. I definitely agree.
It's change.
Yeah. And so refocusing is so important. It's the first step when handling change, is having your refocus. Okay, whatever that refocus is, whatever that change is that you're occurring. The next letter, U, stands for using network. What I've discovered is that high caliber athletes and even organizations, right? I speak to a lot of businesses going through change, from attorneys to doctors to, counselors to all sorts of people that are dealing with change all the time. And one of the things I say is we have a vast network of people around us, right? I mean, think about professional athletes. They have too many people around them, right? Always tugging on them, trying to get this business or that. But seriously, we all have a vast network of people around us. And tapping into that network is so important, right? And here's why. As you have your refocus, as you look at your refocus, and you say, these are my goals, the next step is to start saying, well, who in my network might I be able to reach out to help with this goal? Now, I want to qualify right now. I'm not talking about using and abusing people. I'm not at all. I'm not talking about, boy, here's my goal and here's somebody I can use to accomplish this goal. I'm going to go use that person. Not at all. I'm talking about creating win-win relationships. Looking at your goals, looking at your refocus while you're going through this change, and saying, who in my network might be a good person I can create a win-win relationship, right? That's what it's all about, creating a win-win relationship. I'll give you a great example. One of the former Red Wings that I interviewed, the name is Sean Burr. He passed away, unfortunately, prematurely, but Sean, when he got done playing professional hockey, he became a financial advisor. And Sean said, you know what? I know a lot of people, right? I know a lot of people. And as a result, what I want to do is I want to tap into my network of people, right? And start letting them know, hey, I'm no longer playing professional hockey. Now I'm, financial advisor. If you need any help, this is what I can do. Boom. It helped accelerate his business very quickly because he tapped right into his network, creating these win-win relationships as a result. Think about that example I gave about Anheuser-Busch, right? Prohibition. Couldn't brew beer anymore, right? But they still had a vast distribution network that they had tapped into before that when they start producing ginger ale, malt extract, even car parts, they start tapping into their vast network to say, hey, we're not brewing beer, but we got ginger ale for you. Is that something you want to distribute? Oh, okay, great. Hey, you know, boy, you don't know anybody? Okay, we've been brewing beer, but I got some car parts we're making now with our machinery, right? You know anybody? Oh yeah, how about, you know, they tapped into their network to be able to expand what they wanted to do with their refocus as a result. Very important thing to do. Again, here's a couple of samples. Here's some sound bites. Doug, I mentioned earlier.
I learned that I needed to ask for help for the first time in my life. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness. I've learned since that it's a sign of strength.
Wow. Ego, right? To hear a professional athlete say, you gotta ask for help. That's like unheard of, other than working on my left hand, you know, we're on a crossover or a shot or something, like asking for help from my coach. But asking for real help in life, that's so important. And that's part of this tapping into the network. Knowing what you're gonna do, that's where the refocus is so important. Then knowing who you want to tap into. Terry Mills played for the University of Michigan and also for the Pistons. Now he's a University of Michigan broadcaster for the basketball games. Listen to what Terry has to say about it.
I get a call after year 4 from a good friend of mine, Pete Scorch, who is down at the Pistons right now, and he was at the University of Michigan at the time, and say, I've got a position and opening up. Why don't you come in and audition for the position?
Work directly with universities, and we actually go through and help get to that point of being able to help them manage and get to that point of commercializing their products. And it's just really exciting because we teamed up with the University of Pittsburgh, we teamed up with Michigan, we teamed up with Columbia. That's just, they're a new partner as well with us. So it's just exciting to really see that different side of being able to help some of those technologies come to life.
I got a call from Vinnie Johnson. Vinnie said, what do you think about coming back here and working for me? And I thought about it. I said, sure, Vinnie, I would do that. So I came back here, worked for him at J&M Automotive Transport Company.
Doing what? What kind of things were you doing?
I was in sales in there.
All my ups and downs have been public, and they were there along the way for
supporting you, and
right, which enabled me to get, you know, with a lot of help from a lot of people, get to where I am today.
Where people you just heard from there. That's Darren McCarty, who I mentioned about earlier, 4-time Stanley Cup winner. Talked about how the Red Wings and other people that he tapped in to help get help is now sober as a result. Changed his life. You heard also from Buddha Edwards again, but the other guy that you didn't maybe recognize was Charlie Batch. Charlie Batch played football at Eastern Michigan University, played for the Lions, got traded to Pittsburgh. And that's where he talked about in Pittsburgh, all these connections that he had with the universities and different things, helped him expand football. Very important to tap into your networks, right? We all have a vast network around us. And again, it's not use and abuse. It's not finding people that help me accomplish my goals. It's how to create win-win relationships and do that at the same time. That's the real value of that. I think this is Buddha one more time. He's got some
I got a call from Vinnie Johnson. Vinnie said, what do you think about that?
One, yeah. So using networks is very important. So again, here's your challenge right now. Think about your goal that you just wrote down. Think about when you're refocusing during this change, you wrote down a goal. Think about some people in your life. Maybe it's 1, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 10. Just jot down some names right now of people that come to mind when you think about this refocus. Go ahead and take a couple moments to do that. You start establishing the refocus during your changes, and you start thinking about people in your life that you could create win-win relationships to help accomplish those goals. Using the network, using your network. Again, as you write down those names, think about the win-win. What could be a win? Maybe you have to ask that question. Well, here's my win. This is what I want to accomplish. What's the win for you? Often when I go to meetings, that's one of the first questions that we get into is, well, I know what the win is for me. What's the win for you? I want to hear this. And if it matches, it's great, right? Sandler sales training. Anybody learn Sandler sales training at all? There's 4 things. There's what they call an upfront contract, right? You walk into a meeting, whether it be a sales meeting or whatever it is, with 4 options in mind, and write this down. If you haven't learned this, this is amazing. I walk into, if I've never met with somebody before or talked to somebody before, I walk in and I always give them an upfront contract, as they call it. It's where I say, you know what, these are the 4 options I'm walking in. One is that you might decide after talking that we're not a match, right? There's nothing here that really appeals to you, and that's okay. I might decide that we're not a match, right? You and I talk, and we talk about what I'm doing, what you're doing, and we go, okay, you know, nice to meet you, great, but we're not a match. The third option is, well, this is interesting, let's gather more information, let's get back together, let's pull some more people in, whatever it is. Or the fourth option is, this makes total sense, let's go. Right? Those are the 4 options you walk in. And so as you set up these networks of people, you're looking at that. Boy, you know, we might walk in and here's my goal, and yeah, okay, you might decide it's not a match, I might decide it's not a match. We might say, let's get more information, or hey, let's go, right? Those are the 4 options. It really diffuses anything as far as when it comes to sales, it really does. Because people understand, okay, you know, I can walk away from this and you can walk away from this, and you know, it's a great way to approach people, because then it's not as threatening as a result. Again, we don't want to create a, I'm using you. We want to create a win-win, and that's one of the ways to do it. Next letter, L, stands for letting go. Bar none, no argument whatsoever, you'll never get me to agree that anything different is that this is the most difficult for professional athletes. Letting go. Think about it. As a professional athlete, it's in the marrow of our bones to never give up. Fall down 8, get up 9, right? You just keep going, you keep going. And it's one of the most difficult aspects of a pro athlete is time to give it up and let it go. But there are things in life that we have to let go of in order to move forward, especially when dealing with change, right? I'll give you a great example. I got a phone call years ago from a gentleman out of Houston, Texas, right? He got my number somehow from a mutual friend. He goes, hey, I heard you're the guy that deals with change. I said, yeah, tell me more. He says, well, I just won a bronze medal in Olympics, and I'm trying to decide what I'm gonna do next. I'm like, congratulations, you got my attention, right? I said, tell me more about what you're thinking. He says, well, I don't know what I'm thinking. I said, I understand. So we started working through these rules, right? We started going through, okay, the refocus, let's look at this. And he's had some ideas of what he wanted to accomplish and stuff when he was done with sports. Then we started talking about his network, who in your network might be able to help you with this. We got to this one right here. 6 months later, we were still talking about it. He couldn't decide if he wanted to commit another 4 years of his life for the Olympics or not. He couldn't. So we got hung up. Contrast is, I got a phone call from an agent, and he had a player that just got released from the Detroit Tigers during spring training. He was a pitcher. And he says, hey, would you mind coming and sitting down with one of my clients here and just talk to him about this? I said, yeah, no problem. So I went and sat down with this guy, just got released the week before from the Tigers during spring training, and I started walking through this. Walked through all of them, R.U.L.E.S. Within a week, he was done. He let go. He's like, I'm no longer a professional athlete, moved on. You know, emotionally did really well. So the reason why I bring that up is everybody's different with your letting go, right? There's different timetables, there's different scales. I've talked to athletes that were out of pro sports for 10 years that felt like they still could play, literally. I'll give you one, Kelly Kapuka, right? You ever heard of Kelly Kapuka? Yeah. Kelly, when he and I talk, I mean, he literally is like, I can still play. And I want to tell him, Kelly, you know, 50 years old or whatever you are now at that time, right? It's like, you know, I'm not going to tell him that, but here's another example. If you look at corporate side of things, right? I had a meeting with a Ford executive years ago, and I asked them point blank. I said, you know, during this downturn in 2008 that we all experienced and everybody saw, Ford was one of them that didn't take money. You know, they got through it, right, somehow. I said, help me understand what you did to go through that sudden change, right? It was sudden, it was very drastic. And he says, yeah, there was a lot of things we did. He says, one of the things we did as an executive team is, you know, we realized that we were spending tens of millions of dollars, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, on an ad campaign saying quality is job one. Anybody remember that? All those Ford commercials, right? Can we drive a Ford in here? Yeah. Okay, all right. So, I'm not done yet, okay? It's not a slam against Ford. This executive said, you know, we realized we're spending all these millions of dollars telling everybody quality is job one, but we weren't living it. We had to let go of the fact that we were saying it, but we weren't doing it. We had to let that go. And they started creating products, right? In 2008, 2009, that really, I think it was the Fusion that really set the bar with the Ford product that they, wow, this is a tight car, right? Things are, you know, these are really tight. And so as a result, it turned their business around and became very profitable as a result for Ford because they let go of something they needed to let go of in order to move through that change. That's just one example. Again, let's hear what some of these guys have to say about this because Very important. This guy, Barbaro Garbe. Unless you're a baseball fan, you probably won't know who he is. Anybody know who this guy is, Barbaro Garbe?
Yeah, he's on the '84 Tigers for one thing.
There you go. So Barbaro Garbe's story is he was on the national team in Cuba. He's from Cuba. He was one of the best players in Cuba. He defected in 1980 on a 2,000-person flotilla that came across from Cuba into Florida. Think about that. That was 1980. In 1984, he won a World Series with the Detroit Tigers.
Wow.
So listen what Barbaro has to say about this letting go.
Very hard. It's very hard when you play for so many years and you play you live the life you really dream of to live, like baseball or play professional at the higher level. When it's time to quit, it's very difficult.
Yeah, letting go is very difficult. I'm not gonna lie to you, right? I have to joke with you though. Anybody know that Saturday Night Live skit where they talked about baseball been very good to me? You know, it dates me a little bit, but I couldn't help when interviewing Barbaro. That's what kept going through my head the whole time. With all due respect, right?
It totally did.
Yeah, but very difficult, right? Letting go. And each of us have something to let go in order to move forward, right? And we're gonna talk more about that in a moment, but here's another example.
Can I just interject?
Of course, yeah.
That's very, very compelling. He didn't just give up baseball at some point.
He gave up his family. He had to leave his family.
Left.
Yeah, he had to leave his family, his wife, his kids. It was very difficult. Now, they were able to bring him over eventually, but it was very challenging for him because he was one of 2,000 people. Think about that. You're one of the best athletes in your country, and you're gonna defect. That's what he did. And fortunately, within a very short amount of time, he ended up on a team that won a World Series. I mean, talk about a story, right? And so it's it's an amazing story. And it's neat to get that out there, right? I mean, because I didn't know about it before I met him either, that detail.
Emotionally, it's like a death. You are, you've been playing this game so long, you have teammates, it's your lifestyle, it's your life. You get lost into, the person and the basketball player. And when you have to cut it off, seem like overnight, it's tough to do. It's like parting with one of your limbs.
Ever felt like when you let go of something, it's like parting with one of your limbs? Sometimes, right? Maceo Bastion played at the University of Michigan, played in the NBA with the Toronto Raptors, won a couple championships over in Europe. Again, businessman, got into it right away and started businesses. He was on, what's the cupcake show on the Food Channel? He and his wife won a competition. They had a cupcake store over in Royal Oak. Literally, Maceo did. That's what I thought. I was so enamored by that story. I said, man, you gotta be on the show, right? Let's talk about your pro sports. Well, let's more importantly talk about, you went from the NBA to cupcakes? Come on, right? And so anyway, but again, letting go is like part of you dying. It really is. And so, I'm not gonna sit here and say it's easy. And what you have to let go of is sometimes difficult to
I gotta
identify.
say something.
Yeah, of course.
My daughter is a middle schooler. She's a softball pitcher. So not super competitive, she's not, but we hired a private trainer for her. And her private trainer is, I think she's probably in her early 40s, but she played pro softball for Italy. And she even said the same thing, like you were saying, when you went over to Europe and you're like, holy crap, you're young, and then it's like your world. But she has just announced that she's only going to be training for another 4 more years. She said it was very, very difficult for her to let go. She's also a teacher, but it was very difficult for her to make that decision of not training any more of these, these athletes, because she had to. But she knew that she had to do that in a transition. Not taking any more athletes and just working with the ones that are good. I think just the way she had explained it, because obviously my kid was like, what? Like, hello, I still have 4 more years,
Right.
And she said that she's like, her graduating class of 2026, she's going to be, that's it. She's not taking any more, athletes or anything.
Yeah.
So, but it's very
interesting. Yeah, because a lot of the athletes that I know, former professional athletes I know, they get into coaching because it keeps them in contact with the sport or some type of executive position, right? I just was golfing with Yuri Fisher. I don't know if you know Yuri Fisher. He was the Red Wing that died literally of a heart attack, and they revived him on the ice, in the bench right there. Anyway, he's now working for the Red Wings, doing some player development stuff with them. But my point is this: a lot of the athletes get into coaching, somehow working with the team still, so they can stay involved. Sales, a lot of them get into sales because their name gets them in the door, right? And open up the door, and start talking to somebody. Dave Bergman, who played for the '84 Tigers, before he passed away, talked about how he always had an agreement. If he went on a sales call, it was 7 minutes of baseball. That's it. That's it. We're cut off at 7 minutes. The rest of the time, we're gonna talk about why I'm here, right? For that reason, yeah.
I have to say that when you first started this, all I could think of is, I thought of the astronauts. Because their goals and what they did, and you had all the glory, and then all of a sudden, it's over with. Your trip to the moon's over with. What do I do next?
Yeah.
And so when you're looking at all this, it's like with goals that we set with our life. Okay, you're gonna reach that goal, then what are you gonna do afterwards? You know, we just don't take our life serious because we think we're gonna live forever. And you do. Even at my age, I think that I never think about anything, but we shouldn't be morbid about it, but we really should take our life more serious. Are you doing something that really is not bringing you to your goal, or you're just doing it? And people do this. So,
Yeah, no, you're right. I couldn't agree with you more as a result.
But I thought of the astronauts, they kept thinking about.
Well, it's funny you mentioned astronauts because I don't get enamored by people that I meet. I mean, I really don't. I'm like, okay, you put your pants on like I do, or your socks or whatever. You have issues like I have at home with my kids and stuff like that, right? It doesn't bother me whatsoever. I don't get like starstruck. The only time I've been starstruck is I met a guy who was a space shuttle astronaut. He and I were playing at a charity golf outing up in Frankenmuth. And I'm talking to this guy, for one, he's about this tall, right? I would never fit in one of those bad boys, right? He was about this tall. But I'm like, what was it like to go to space, right? I said, can I get a picture, you know? And it really was. I was enamored by him because I'm like, for that very reason, it's like, wow, these guys are like either insanely crazy, right? Or braver than anything ever before, right? That they would do that, yeah.
The documentary that they have right now about the 4 civilians that are going out on the, I highly recommend it. There's a girl that her dream was to go. She had cancer at 10 years old, has an implant in her leg. One of their things they had to do was climb a mountain to 10,000 feet. And she was like,
so accomplishing things.
But she did it. And these 4 civilians are going to be going to the moon, and what they've done in 6 months, but they have this whole documentary of what an astronaut does for years that they're doing in 6 months. And it goes into everything you're saying, just the mindset, the writing it down, the goals, what am I doing next in life, and always working towards that. And then they were picked because of their story and how they overcame those types of things.
Yeah, they let go of some things, right? I mean, I'll give you a great example. A guy that I know, he's down in Georgia now, his name's Cal Menard. Cal Menard was born with no arms or legs, just a torso, okay? Cal Menard climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. He had stubs. And it was like, this guy, wow. Like I said, you're either insane or extremely courageous, right? I think it's the latter. But again, what did he have to let go of? Well, I don't have any arms or legs. And he talked about how his parents raised him to say, you're gonna be a normal kid. I don't care how, whatever. You're gonna be a normal kid. And he was involved with sports. He did different things. He played football, right? Imagine a kid coming at you like that to tackle you. It's like, but he can't, he literally, he was like a normal kid. And he's climbed things. And so there's certain things we have to let go of. And let me get into a couple more. Again, this is Rocky Blyer talking about letting go.
No one teaches us, even in society, how to retire, how to leave a job. So in sports, you leave either because you're not good enough and you get cut, or you get traded, or you get injured, or you decide, but how do you make that decision?
Schedule is what they control, and then all of a sudden, because I was so close, you're kind of putting yourself like, oh, it's time to start OTA practice. It's time to report to training camp. Wait a minute. No, it's not. You're not a player anymore. So it was tough to get out of that.
Emotionally, it's like a death. You are, you've been playing this game so long. You have teammates. You have, it's your lifestyle. It's your life. You get lost into, the person and the basketball player. And when you have to cut it off, seem like overnight, it's tough to do, it's like parting with one of your limbs.
You heard that before, but that's so important because it is true. So again, back to you. Take a few moments right now. Think about the refocus, what you wrote down as a goal, or multiple goals. Think about the network of people you talked about. Think about one thing, maybe more, of what you have to let go in order to accomplish that. Maybe it's a negative thinking. Maybe it's something positive, you know? One of the things that I know is that, great, we accomplished something, so what? Right, we're gonna talk about that in the next letter. But what is it that you have to let go of? What's one thing, maybe multiple things you have to let go of in order to move forward through this change? The quicker you can let go of that, the quicker you're gonna get through this transition and change. Again, it takes thinking, more information than ever before, but less thinking. We have to think. What is it I need to let go of? All right, finish up that thought. Next letter, R-U-L-E stands for execute. This is where the work comes in, right? This is where the action comes in. I can have my refocus, I can use my network, I can let go, but now this is time to work, right? This is time to get to work. Now, most of us, if not all of us in this room, will know what that is in that image, right? What do you know about that?
It's a water pump.
It's a water pump. What do you know about that type of water pump?
You have to put it
You have to pump it. What do you know sometimes, even if you pump it, what happens? You have to prime it, right? Sometimes you gotta put water in there and you gotta pump it. And sometimes it works. Sometimes you might have to put water in there again and pump it. Sometimes you gotta pump it and put more water in and pump it and pump it and put it. It's that way in change and transition. You might refocus, you might use your network, you might let go, but sometimes you have to continue to do so to get through that change. It might be one pump and you're getting water. It might be 100 pumps and you're getting water. You have to continue to execute. Famous saying I heard from a coach, he was one of the winningest basketball coaches in the nation. He said, knowing what to do isn't good enough if you don't have the discipline to do it. Knowing what to do isn't good enough if you don't have the discipline to do it. Executing takes discipline, it takes hard work. This is the action as a result. Let me tell you before we get into this, why that's so important, why the action is so important. Earlier this summer, I was asked to MC a nonprofit charity event. And I have to be totally honest with you. That week was one of the toughest weeks I've had in years, probably decades, literally. We were having problems with our 19-year-old daughter. We're having some issues, you know, with my wife and I. I'm human, last I knew, right? It was just a tough week. And it came to Friday, and that night I was supposed to MC this 3-hour event, volunteer my time to go do this. And I can honestly tell you, the last thing I felt like doing was going to that event.
Right.
I'm like, man, how can I get out of this thing? I don't feel like doing this. My feelings, I didn't feel like doing this. Thank God I did. Because my wife and I went there, and we had the time of our life. It was I mean, it really was a fun event. It was just a lot of fun. People were really upbeat, and it was a band, and all. I'm like, wow, and I was emceeing the event. And by the time we left, I felt like I was floating out. I'm like, wow, this is great. Thank goodness I didn't just go by what I felt like, which was not doing anything, right? And I still did it. It's that way when dealing with change. When dealing with change, sometimes we don't feel like doing anything. Sometimes we don't want to do anything. You know, sometimes people feel like, oh man, change, no, you know, stay away. No way, right? And there's organizations, unfortunately, I speak to some organizations that, well, we don't do that here. We don't change. Well, guess what? Good luck, right? It takes longer to change. Well, guess what? Good luck. Seriously, right? Executing is so important. And this is where the work comes in. I'll tell you a couple more stories, but let's hear it. This is Charlie Batch again.
People see the end result, and that's me as a professional football player, but they don't necessarily know the journey that it took to get there. So it's important for me to share that with them to let them know the importance of hard work.
There's many athletes out there, I'm sure you saw them also, that were more talented, but they did not work to get to where they should be. And I saw guys who were not as athletic, who worked super hard and became real good athletes.
The main thing is to stay positive and try to find something that you like to do after you retire. Stick with it, and good things will happen.
But my first advice would be, I know it's tough emotionally with the change. I would say reflect on that, but don't get stuck on that.
What do you mean by that? Don't get stuck on it?
Don't get stuck on what it was, because you know the world is moving
glory
forward.
days,
The
right?
glory days,
Yeah.
because everyone is moving forward with or without you. So you can't get stuck on it.
if you have an idea in your mind that what you want to do, stick to it. Don't let nobody try to detour you to have you think of trying to do something else with that mind is constantly in your mind already to do it. Try to go out and try to tackle it and see what comes out of that.
You have to prepare for that, and I had a little low period because I had an agent that was kind of crooked, and he kind of stole some money from me and put me in some bad investments. But I overcame that, and just keep it moving. That's all you can. That's all you can do.
When you're gonna have bumps, you're gonna run through bumps, just like bump stops. But you got to keep going and keep going and keep going. Then eventually something's gonna open up. You can't never give up.
Great advice. Terry Durod. Terry Durod was a local guy here, won a state championship at Hamtramck, won at University of Detroit. He actually won an NBA championship in Boston with the Celtics, played with the Pistons, but he won a championship with the Boston Celtics. Unfortunately, he was passed away about a year ago. After he was done playing pro basketball, he actually became a fireman. He was a Detroit fireman for quite a few years. Wow. That's what he did after pro sports. So again, talking about how it's a grind, right? Getting through change is a grind. It just doesn't happen. Even if you have the best refocus, using your network, letting go, you have to work. There's an action. And sometimes it's not always easy as a result. So before I get into your activity, again, I mentioned I'm a history buff, right? Back in the Roman Empire, when the Roman Empire was enacted, they had these big wars, and the Roman generals would come home from those wars and have these big parades as a result when they came home from these conquering lands, right? So as a Roman general, I'd come home, I'd have all my plunder, I'd be there, and they'd have these big, what they called campaigns. It was like a Super Bowl parade to today, right? What we have for today, when we have these championship teams, they go through the streets of their hometown. That's what it was like in Rome. So these generals would come home, they would be on their chariots, they'd be dressed in, their family be with them dressed in white and, getting all these accolades. You just came back from wherever, Crete or wherever they conquered. I don't know history that well. Yeah. But when they come home from their conquering lands, they'd have these big campaigns and parades. And as a result, they're getting all these accolades, but it's written in history. You can read this. As they're going through these big parades and getting all these accolades and everybody's cheering, they have somebody on their chariot chirping in their ear the whole time, saying, all glory is fleeting. All glory is fleeting. You accomplish something, so what? What's next? What are you gonna do? What's the next action? What's the next step you're gonna take? And that's the way when we handle change as well. You can refocus, use your network, let go. You have to continue to execute over and over again. So my challenge to you right now is think about what your action is. What's your next step? Just one step now. You have your refocus, talking about your network, talking about what you have to let go. What's your next step? One step now. We could go again, we could list a whole list of steps right now, but what's your next step? What's the action that you need to take to get through this change? Just one, that's all you gotta do.
I picked the wrong change. This is
hard.
hard.
Hey, I love that. You know what the good news about this? Take this home and go through all the change you want to go through. You can use this exercise. You don't have to do it just here, okay? In fact, please don't just leave here and like, I'm done.
No, but it's like, I picked the wrong change and I'm like, shoot, how am I gonna execute on this one? You can do it.
You can execute on
No,
it.
I don't know, like I'm trying to, we'll help you.
You have to think about it.
Well, that's what I am doing.
That's the
it.
problem, right? It takes thinking, right?
It takes thought.
Thought process. It takes thinking.
The wrong change.
It can't be the wrong change if it's the right change.
If you picked it.
It is the right change, but not for this.
The answers are easy.
Well, I do have a counseling background. We can change this into a group session right now if you'd like.
I can do a little therapy.
Hi, I'm Kurt. Right?
Amen.
Seriously, this is the great part about facing change and handling change, isn't it? Right? I mean, it causes us to think. Like, why did I think, But you know what? You picked it for a reason, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But this one's hard. This execute one. I'm like, how?
Hey, what did this guy say right here? This guy right here. Where was he at? No, he's the last guy in there. He was what Terry Durod said. It's hard, right?
It is.
It's really hard, right? Absolutely it is.
You know.
I'm not here to preach that this is easy.
Easy.
No, it's not that. Going through change, piece of cake. It is gonna set you up for quicker success. I can tell you the people that apply these 5 things, whether you're individual, organization, corporation, you apply these 5 things, it's gonna accelerate that process more successfully.
Okay.
I'm reading a very good book right now. It's called Get Over Your Damn Self. And it's all about change, about your business, about what you're doing with your life. The number one thing is people have to ask themselves, why am I doing this? Why am I doing it? Is it just for a paycheck? What are you doing? I talk to people who are retired. I can hardly wait until I'm retired. Oh, what are you doing retired? Oh, I'm just gonna play golf and go to lunch and do. No, no, no. If you're a man, you're gonna die in 2 years. If you do not have a goal, and we need to be goal oriented. And I didn't come from a family background where we were goal oriented because it was a matter of just putting food on the table. That was the big goal.
That was the goal. Yeah.
That was the big goal.
That was the goal. Yeah.
And so now, you learn so much as you go through life, and you have so much information, you want to share it with people, but they go, oh, no, no. Yes, you gotta know why. Why are you here? What's your purpose?
Yeah, Mark alluded to it in my introduction. One of the companies I own is called Purpose Point. Purpose Point is a leadership development organization, and what we do is we align individuals and organizations with their purpose. What we see in organizations is often an organization started with purpose, right? It had a certain purpose, that was the purpose of it. And as they begin to grow and scale, which hopefully businesses do, as they grow and scale, they have to add more people. As they add more people, they have to add more processes to handle those people. And as they add more processes, all of a sudden they become so focused on profits because they have to continue to support the processes and people for that organization. And what do? They lose sight of their purpose, their original purpose. And so my organization, our goal is to permeate that purpose throughout all those layers, right? You still have to be profitable, you still have to have processes, you still have to have people. But you better make darn sure that that purpose is permeated throughout all that and part of your culture, right? And that's why it's so important as a result. The final letter, S, stands for someone. What I discovered is anybody through transition, individuals, organization, has someone, a mentor, so to speak, to help them through this. And let me tell you why. In my previous professional life, I was in education. I was an elementary teacher and I was a middle school counselor.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's what I did in my previous professional life, right? After I got done playing pro basketball. And one of the things I learned during that journey was that there's different ways to learn. And for me, one way to learn is reflection, right? You reflect. Some people pray, some people transcend, whatever you want to call it, right? You reflect and you learn from that. You think, oh, okay, I'm learning. That's one way. Another way is what they call the school of hard knocks, where I learn through my experiences. I have experiences and I learn from those experiences, some good, some bad, right? But I learn from those experiences. That's the second way. The third way is to learn from others. And that way is the easiest. So as I aged, I realized, wow, I want to learn from others as much as I can, because I don't want to go through this, own experience. Sometimes it's painful, sometimes it takes too long. I want to learn as much from others. And so that's where a mentor, someone comes in handy to say, here's my goal, here's my refocus, here's my network of people, my vast network, here's my letting go, here's my execution. Who's one person, maybe probably from my network, that I can really learn from? It's somebody who's been there before. I have an activity, but before we do that, let's listen to what some of these folks had to say about it.
I mean, it's just a great experience. When you come into the league and you have Kareem as your mentor, and then your last year you have Michael Jordan as your mentor, and then you meet all these great guys in between.
Find people who are successful, and let them kind of, mentor you. I've learned that mentors don't always have to be someone older. It can be someone your age or younger. But just find someone who is smarter than you and more successful than you, and learn from them.
Good advice, right? Picking out a mentor, no question about it. Here's Tommy Hearns, 7-time world champion. You can tell by Tommy that he's been through 160 professional fights. I tell people,
that's right.
You go through 160 professional fights where somebody's goal is to knock your head off your shoulders.
Yeah.
He's cognitively dealing with that right now, unfortunately. So, but listen to what he has to say about it. Emmanuel Stewart, who you didn't know, was his manager, and it was like a father figure for him. Became his mentor. Oops. He was like a father figure for you, right?
Very much like so.
Yeah.
Emmanuel was like we was together all the time. We always have a conversation with each other, And he would give me pointers, tell me things that I should know, what I should do, what I should do. It wasn't like I didn't know, but he wanted to ensure in me that we were doing the right thing. I knew we were doing the right thing because it was happening too perfectly.
Jerry Durant again.
Dick always taught you, whatever
Dick
you want
Vitale's
to
talking
do, be
about.
good at it. And he always stressed that. And like I say, Dick, he was important in my life because he always stressed, it's gonna be, you gotta do something after basketball. You got to do something.
Right, so he set him up right off the bat. So who's somebody in your life, maybe a mentor, somebody in particular? It could be a spouse, it could be a friend. You have your refocus, you have your big network to tap into, you are letting go of things, you're executing what your action plan is. Name one person that might be a mentor for what you want to accomplish. Somebody perhaps who's already been there, somebody who perhaps, whether it be a family situation, a work situation, whatever it is. Think about one person that could be a mentor for you in order to accomplish this.
Can it just be one or can I have more?
You know, I have had multiple mentors throughout my life at different stages of my life, as I go through different changes, different mentors, so to speak. So absolutely, if you have, a couple people maybe, right?
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not saying you just, nope, no, ask me one.
Okay.
Even better, actually. You know, what you don't want to do is get into like 10 people where it's like, because you're going to start getting different advice, right? Different mentoring as a result. But again, focus on what is it you're refocusing on, what your goal is, and would be a good fit for that, right?
How do you feel about mentoring groups where people, for example, let's say this group, got together on a regular basis and shared the challenges that they were having and got information from each other from a different perspective than their own?
I don't think you go wrong with something like that, right? You're getting knowledge from other people, right? The only problem with that is advice is only as good as it is heeded, right? You're gonna have a lot of people with a lot of different advices, and you heed it where appropriate. I mean, to sign a Major League Baseball contract these days, when a young man goes in to sign a contract, they, by policy, have to have a financial advisor at their hip, right? So they're signing this big multi-year, multi-million-dollar contract typically, and they have to have a financial advisor on their hip when it's happening. The problem is, advice is only as good as it is heeded. My money, if I wanna buy a Bentley and Rolex and all this, hey, okay, yeah, I hear your advice, but I'm still gonna make my decisions based on it's my money, right? And so whether it be money or whatever it is. So yeah, I mean, obviously, the more advice we can get, the things that, as I alluded to earlier, you're gonna get cloudy water when you have all these different opinions.
Right, I agree.
So, yes.
We used to go on to a mastermind group, could be no more than 4, maybe 6. Most of the time we kept it at 4. And what you did is you did meet weekly and only for an hour. And then you all had the same purpose and you shared how you were going to do things and you were kept accountable. That's the thing I think with mentoring is you have to be held accountable that, okay, you said you're gonna do this last week, what's your goal? What have you done? And that really does put your feet to the fire.
I mentioned I do half-day workshops, right? I mean, we really could get deep into this about mentoring and how, one of the benchmarks and the points you're looking for with that mentor and, again, creating a win-win. You'll notice this, it's the word attitude, right? And again, I love acronyms, can you tell? I'm the acronym guy, it helps me remember things. And this is the acronym for attitude, and here's why. This is an actual image of the cockpit of a 777 jet.
Yes.
A friend of mine who I grew up with, elementary, middle school, high school, he is now a captain of a 777, travels internationally all over, works like 4 days a month or whatever it is. I joke with him, Anyway, he took this picture when he was doing through his training, and I'm like, oh, this is amazing, right? This is really cool. But the reason why I use that as an image is because our attitude will determine our altitude, right? Yeah. In fact, this attitude, this acronym attitude, each letter means something, each letter stands for something. And I know we have a smaller group here, which is nice because we've been able to interact, but I'm gonna need some help with this, all right? I'm gonna need some volunteers to actually help me with this. And so if you don't mind, I need somebody to be an A up here for me. Who would like to be a volunteer? Come on up here. Have you stand right here. So this A stands for altitude. Go and face this way. Yep, there we go. This A stands for altitude because our attitude determines our altitude. We're not doing a YMCA. I refuse. I heard that enough through college. I'm like, oh man, if I hear that song one more time. So the next letter is T. I need a T up here. Who would like to be a T? Come on up. Oh yeah, it only makes sense.
T for Tom.
Yeah, there we go. Oh, T for Tom. Thank you. So this T stands for teachable, because it's important to have an attitude of teachability, right? In order to have a good attitude, you have to be teachable. You have to be able to learn. I need another T. All the way in the back. Come on, you look like you're ready to go.
But I want to write down what that T means.
I'll write them down. I'll write them down. You can copy them.
Okay.
Tempting.
I feel short.
I was once your height, so there's still hope, okay? So this T stands for teamwork, because very little accomplished in life without a team, right? I've spoke to schools before, and I remember talking to some elementary kids, and I always ask them when we get to the attitude part, because a lot of times what do kids think when you bring up the word attitude? Not that attitude talk again. I'm like, no, this is not that. I talk about these things, and when I talk about teamwork, I always ask students, I say, name one thing that you do in your life where there's nobody else involved. Is there a job or anything? And I had one kid, he says, being a postman, delivering mail. I'm like, okay, yeah, they might be out on their own delivering mail by themselves, but where do they get it from? Where do they give it to? Oh yeah, okay. Then somebody said, researcher, they're back in there doing their own little research. And I said, yeah, they might be there by themselves doing that, but where do they get the information from? Who do they give it to if they discover something? Oh yeah, okay. So everything in life involves a team around us, right? And so I have an attitude of understanding that team is very important. The next letter I need somebody with the I. All right, come on up. Isabella, is that your name by chance? I can really knock this out. When I've done bigger groups, it's like, I need an I. Who's an I? Okay, well, there we go. This I stands for intensity. Now, let me clarify this for a second. I love my wife. She loves me dearly. I love her dearly. But often I'll hear from her. She'll go, Kurt, why are you so intense, right? You're so intense sometimes. And I'll be like, no, honey, I'm not intense. I'm just laser focused, right? So to me, that's what intensity is. It's laser focus, right? It's a laser focus. It's important to have an attitude of focus, right? Because sometimes distractions are our biggest enemy, right? We have so many distractions. And so having that intensity, that focus is very important. Next letter, who can spell here? Again, we're now in the spelling, from math, the history. The T, okay. I need a T up here.
I'm writing. Somebody
Okay.
go.
All right,
I'll
come
write
on
them
up.
down. You go.
You guys, all these folks, I hope somebody's volunteering to give them their notes about the letters afterwards. We used to call it cheating when I was growing up.
Yeah, that's right.
It's the way of life and education anymore, right? So this T is a relative of intensity, it's tenacity, right? And tenacity is the ability of not giving up, right? You don't give up, right? You have an intensity which is focus, but the tenacity is not giving up. Next letter, U. I need somebody with U. Come on up. Your name's not Ursula though, is it?
We're gonna call her.
Can you guys slide down a little bit, because we want to make sure we keep this on camera for those. All right, this U stands for unselfish. It's important to have an unselfish attitude, right? I gotta tell you, in our world today, growing up, right? I mean, we're by nature, as we're little kids, what is it we always hear? That's my sand bucket, right? I'm gonna sand, it's my toy, right? I hear that growing up with our kids. I mean, it's like, unselfish attitude is so important, right? Next letter, D. I need a D in here. We're running out of bodies, Mark.
Yep.
That's all right.
Somebody go.
Right.
I'm writing.
If I've got it right,
Slide
I
down a
already
little
wrote
bit
it.
there. It's okay. Are we okay? I mean, I know spacing. All
We'll
right.
just do the
So this
photos
D
then.
stands for discipline.
Oh, I wrote
This
wrong,
D
right?
stands for discipline. And what's the best kind of discipline?
Self.
Self-discipline. Again, when I spoke at a school years ago, and I asked that very question, one of the kids in the back says, when I said, what's the best kind of discipline? He goes, a spanking and sat in the corner. Not my words. But the best kind of discipline is self-discipline, right? And self-discipline is an important attitude to have. The last letter, E. I need an E up there.
It's gonna be me.
Oh, look at both of you, come on. This is not stage. This is not stage, okay?
Energy.
This E stands for enthusiasm. Right, how appropriate, I love that. All right? Because it's important to have an enthusiastic attitude, passion, as I call it, purpose, right? All those things are important. So let's go right down the list. A stands for altitude,
Altitude.
right? Because your altitude determines, or your attitude determines your altitude. The first T stands for teachable. It's important to be teachable. Attitude.
Teamwork.
Teamwork. Everything involves a team, right? Having an attitude of team.
Intensity.
Intensity, focus, right? Tenacity, not giving up. Next letter?
Unselfish.
Unselfish, right? D stands for?
Discipline. Discipline.
I'm going,
You didn't
because I
write it
wrote,
down,
no, I
right.
wrote determined.
Well, that's close, yeah. Discipline, and the best kind of discipline is? Self-discipline. And the E stands for?
Enthusiasm.
Yeah, so it's important to be enthusiastic. Let's give them an enthusiastic hand. Thank you for went out on a limb here. I'll tell you, they didn't know what I was gonna put them in, right? I worked with.
See, Erin wanted to be E because she's Erin. Because I'm an E. E-R-I-N.
You know what, Aaron? Next time I'm here, if I had to do the same presentation, you could be all of them.
I was here last time.
Oh, were you? Okay.
It was excellent then,
Thank
too,
you.
as now.
So, I left you with a story at the beginning here, right? Where I told you about my transition and laying on that cold hardwood floor. And I want to finish that story because I laid on my parents' couch following knee surgery, and I was angry. I was outright angry. I mean, here I was, 27 years old, living a life, living a great life, and all of a sudden it was over. It was done. And I laid on my couch at my parents' house, just angry. I'm like, how could this happen? Prime of my life, best athletic, shape I've ever been in, and it was done. And partway through that, I took a year off just to kind of regroup. And partway through that year, I said, you know what? I got to do something productive. I just don't like feeling this way, right? Being angry and just not being productive or anything. So I decided to go start graduate school, work on a master's in counseling, and finish that degree. And so it caused me to realize some things. As we go through all of our change, whatever the change is in our life, the sudden change that happens, titles are great, making money are great, but the real value in life is impacting others' lives. Impacting others' lives. That's what the real value is, right? Is it nice to have a title? Absolutely. It's nice to make money, of course. But the real value of life is impacting positively other people. And so as you listen to what I had to say today, and as we talk about all the things that we go through with change, with sudden change, I want to encourage you with the final story. I mentioned in my previous professional life, I was a middle school counselor, did that for over 20 years before I really got into the TV and speaking side of things. In one of those years, I had a 10-year-old girl come to my office. And that 10-year-old girl, I've seen around quite a bit. She always dressed really nice, always had nice snappy clothes on, her hair was always done nice. Well, that day that she came into my office, I could tell something was off. She was disheveled, her hair just didn't look the same, and she wasn't dressed normally like she normally was. And so I just, how's it going? What's going on? And she started opening up to me, and she said, I just not feeling right. I said, okay, well, tell me more. Come to find out, that 10-year-old girl was planning on taking her own life.
Oh,
10 years old. So needless to say, as the counselor in me kicked in and my risk assessment mode started happening, where I went through a risk assessment with her, okay, where are we at, and asking her very strategic questions. And I discovered that she just wasn't talking about it, just didn't verbalize that to me. She had a plan and she had a date on when she was gonna do it. She knew exactly how she was gonna do it, and she knew exactly when she was gonna do it. 10 years old. So needless to say, I got her parent in there and just, we started talking about what was going on. And, once the parent got through the shock of everything, I asked her, this young lady, a key question. I said, so at 10 years old, help me understand why you felt like this is what you wanted to do. And I can honestly tell you, the answer she gave me that day has changed my life. It's changed my life. When I asked her that question, she looked at me, she goes, I felt like I didn't have any other options.
Yeah.
No other options. Well, you can bet I gave her lots of options that day, and her parent, and she's doing great these days, right? She's really excelling, doing very good, very talented. And the reason why I bring up that story is that I've committed the rest of my life to give people options, right? And I encourage you to do the same. We all have options in our life, right? We all have things that when we're dealing with change or whatever it is we're dealing with, we have options. There's always options. And I encourage you to understand that. I also encourage you to be that person that provides other people's options. I do this and I leave my family simply because I, leave my wife at home and kids to come here and help give you options. And my hope is that the options that I provided for you today are something that can change your life in a positive way. This is my contact information, it's my personal cell phone number, my email, my website. If there's something I can do to help you at any time, if there's something I can do to talk to you or help you, or maybe you have somebody else that I can talk to help, whether it be a group, an organization, that's what I'm here for. This is what wakes me up every day, this is what excites me.
That's your purpose.
And that's my purpose, exactly. And so, thank you for your time. Mark, appreciate you having me back here.